Society likes to call these daddy issues. I left the house looking decent. He'd be like,
who are you trying to look good for?
I always had a boy cookie, okay? Don't get it twisted. I had a boy cookie regardless.
You did God, it's heaven on earth, heaven on earth, heaven on earth.
Hey you, welcome. I am so excited that you're here. I'm sharing my testimony despite me feeling about sharing my testimony. We're sharing the testimony. We're gonna get right into it. Really quickly, some Bible verses on why we need to share our testimony. Psalms 107 verse 2 says, "We have nothing to give of value, but he asks for us to tell others about him." It's kind of like a letter of recommendation, if you will. Like, hey, I know life sucks, but here is like the ultimate therapist, the ultimate healer, the creator, your peace. Like, I recommend God, regardless of the situation. And that's what your testimony does. It's a letter of recommendation for others to seek God, pursue God. Make your letter of recommendation, okay? Let's do it. I'm gonna start with my upbringing because this, I feel like, gives a lot of context into the attachment issues, or society likes to call these daddy issues. We're calling it attachment issues, but we're gonna get into that. My upbringing, I had a pretty unconventional upbringing. So I grew up with both of my parents up until I was 14, but they were pretty absent. They weren't really involved in our lives, and they were just kind of just there. My mom worked a lot. Well, she was a certified nursing assistant. She worked in a nursing home, and when she was home, she would watch her soap operas and go about her business. And my dad, I couldn't tell you what he did. I think he did something with trucking. Yeah, he had a growing alcohol problem. The house that we lived in up until I was 8, I remember my parents having like separate bedrooms. So my mom had a bedroom on this side of the house, and my dad had a bedroom on the other side. That is like how I've seen my parents like my whole life. They were pretty verbally abusive toward each other, but more so on my father's side. So that was the relationship that I watched them have. And it's weird, like I knew that they didn't love each other like normally, but I kind of just accepted it because it's all that I knew. I wasn't told I love you like at all during my childhood, and I wasn't really hugged as a child. There wasn't like that normal familial affection that I guess was normal for other people. To me, that was normal. As I grew up, I realized that my parents were like negligent, absent parents. The siblings, we kind of just raised each other. I remember my older brothers giving me chores and then giving me like computer time for doing chores. My brothers being heavily involved in like the early part of my childhood influenced me to become a little bit like more of a tomboy, and this is important for later on. I learned how to shave because of my older brothers, and I learned everything else about being a girl off of the internet. So my father's verbal abuse turned physical. His alcohol addiction had grown like to a peak, so he was physically hitting my mom. And I remember hearing my mother say like she was staying because of us. Like she didn't want us to grow up without a father, but little did she know we were growing up without a father. He eventually got arrested in 2014, and then it was just my single mother and us, the rest of the kids. At this point, now we had a single mom who worked even more, also just not there. On top of that, we were kind of forced to grow up. We dealt with a lot of adult things, so the stress about bills being paid. I was very hyper aware. I remember when she wanted to switch jobs, and so she made us work on her resume and apply for jobs for her. So I was very familiar with the job market and how hard it was to get a job and how hard it was to make a resume at like the age of 12, 11. We filled out the welfare applications for food stamps and Medicaid, things like that. Like we were forced to grow up. We never got the chance to be a child. We didn't go to any sleepovers, have any birthday parties, anything like that. So that was, our upbringing was pretty abnormal, unconventional, but it was all that we knew. We thought it was normal. So my whole life, I believed in God. I had childlike faith. I had those moments where I thought rain was God crying. I went to church, my mom's church, for some years in my preteen years, and then eventually I just stopped going because the church was very judgmental. I wouldn't call it church hurt, but you know, I just stopped going. But that didn't make me stop believing in God. I believed in God my whole life. I didn't necessarily talk to him though, so you know, very much lukewarm, very much like not in my faith like that. I really loved school. So school was kind of like my escape, my perceived escape from everything. That was gonna be my means to leaving that whole situation. My sister, if you guys don't know, I have a twin sister. Me and my twin sister graduated top 10 of our class, and my mom did not know this at all. None of my family knew this. Even though I didn't have like familial support, I had my twin support, and we did it all together. So at this point, I had gotten scholarships. I had received a full-ride scholarship for the University of Florida. So I went to Gainesville, and I to the University of Florida for 2 years, and this is a whole nother section. To college. Now in high school, I had a 2-year on and off relationship with this boy. We're gonna call him boy number one. Boy number one cheated on me 3 times, and you know, I kind of stayed through that because I thought love was supposed to stay through all trials and tribulations. So I stayed, and I was like, I'm gonna be a writer, I'm gonna stay. He went to UCF, I went to UF. We were about 2 hours away, and he was not willing to make the drive to me, and eventually I had to let that relationship go. So I left. I did not grieve at all. I didn't sit and cry about it. Yeah, it was on to the next for me, so I went on to the next. I downloaded Bumble. Again, I'm in a new city. I didn't know anybody. I downloaded Bumble, and I told myself, my self-justification here was I needed friends, and I did, but why was I seeking romantic guy friends, you know? So I went on Bumble. This is when I started kind of just giving myself up to whoever for a couple of months, and not even like in a physical, like intimate sense, but like just talking to whoever, like just because, just kind of filling in that void that I've had for a relationship. I met this one guy on Bumble. We'll call him Jay. He literally slapped me, and I cut that off like right then and there. Boy number 2, and this is a guy that I met on Bumble. I remember I met him like January 2020. This is the pandemic year, and we got into a relationship like soon after meeting each other, and this relationship was super interesting. It lasted about, I'm overestimating here, but 2 years on and off. This relationship was where I realized I was very much afraid to tell a man no. So I don't know why. I guess just watching women get like hurt on the internet, guys not accepting rejection. In this relationship, when guys would hit on me, I would just give them my number and not respond to it, rather than like telling them no, because I was afraid that something would happen to me. Boy number 2 hated that. He essentially told me like I deserved to get cheated on, and that nobody was gonna love me the way that he did. I believed that the whole time I was with him, and even when I left, I held that verbal abuse. This relationship was very toxic. I can go into the depths of how toxic this relationship was, but it was just interesting because he would verbally abuse me in some way. He would be so nice to me, and like he would send me money for food, and yet like just treat me like terrible in some ways. He was very on and off. Like when he was sober, he was a very heavy smoker. So when he was sober, he was like the meanest person on the planet. But when he was like high, he was like, I guess, the person that I like wanted to be with. He was also very controlling. He would go on my phone. He went on my phone, deleted all my guy contacts. I was pretty much getting micromanaged. He read all my messages, he required all my passwords, or else he would leave, and then he made sure I knew that no man would want me. Let's, you know, now that I'm thinking about it, it sounds a lot like my father when he would abuse my mother. This relationship furthered my lack of self-esteem, so my self-esteem was just this was also where I lost my self-respect. He didn't like me leaving the house looking decent or good at all, because it was a problem. This was a long distance relationship, so if I left the house looking decent, he'd be like, why, who are you trying to look good for? And so I lost my self-respect. My presentation to the world just started. I looked like I rolled out of bed every single day because I was trying to kind of make this guy happy. Dahlia, right? I just deemed it as like, I wanted to give everything into these relationships for it to be successful. And I remember like having that moment where I wanted to just come back to God fully. I asked this boy number 2 if we could be abstinent, and he was like, so you want to be friends? And I was like, what? And he was like, we like without sex, then this is just a friendship. And yeah, so in my head it was kind of like I just had to do these things because I started to idolize these relationships with the opposite sex. So I gave everything to these relationships. Again, I thought love had to endure so many trials and tribulations, and that had to be the story, so I stayed. But eventually this one just became too much. Anyways, when I knew who I wanted to be with next, or who I wanted to go for next, that's when I had blocked this guy and I went on to the next. So boy number 3. Another thing, did not grieve. I did not grieve. I did not grieve. I did not stop. I did not cry. Boy number 3. In the beginning, he had wanted nothing to do with me at all. He had told me that most women ran away when they found out he was bisexual. And I guess the pick me inside of me was like, I'm not gonna run away, I'm gonna stay. I'm gonna be the girl that shows you otherwise. Like, I'm gonna be the one that's different. Oh, I should have ran away. I wish I ran away. I remember this guy, like, he had, like, his rent was like $800. He lived in like student housing. He had told me like he needed to go make money, and I was like, oh, it's okay, because I had gotten like a scholarship grant, and I gave him my scholarship grant. But then I found out months later that he had his housing paid for the rest of the year, and he essentially like used me. This relationship was very interesting because I think this is where my self-esteem had hit a rock. I wanted to be a more girly girl. Like I said, I grew up, my brothers kind of basically did a lot of the raising of me, and so I had a lot of tomboy tendencies. I wanted to be a girly girl, and in this relationship he wanted a woman that was girly, wore wigs, wore makeup all the time, and so I did my very best to fit that mold. So I was wearing makeup every day, wear my hair the way he liked it. He liked more skin on women, like, again, the baddies, the Instagram baddies that you see. So I tried to fit that mold, of course. So I bought more revealing clothes. I was wearing like the shortest top, showing as much skin as possible without like showing too much. And it just wasn't like me. I'm very lazy, so me wearing makeup every day, there's nothing wrong with wearing makeup every day, by the way. For me, if I'm not gonna be up for taking the makeup off at the end of the day, I just don't wear makeup. So that was just a lot for me to do for a man. Why would a guy want me if I don't give them this? Me and this guy were living together, essentially. We knew each other for like, what, March to September, and then September is when he moved in with me. We weren't even together at this time, we were just talking, really. But yes, we moved in together, we were living together, and then we broke up at the end of January the following year. I don't know why we were living together, and I wanted to play house so freaking bad. Well, I remember I was doing my nails, this guy was in the shower, and all of a sudden a Transformation Church sermon video had popped up on my YouTube page. I'm like mimicking myself, sorry. And I was like, oh, interesting. And this is part of their Kingdom series, and I was just curious, so I clicked it and I was just listening to it. And I remember thinking like, oh, I really want to like get back to God, and knowing that I couldn't do it with that relationship, that relationship that I was in. And so what I had done, I prayed. And this was odd for me because I had gone a long time without praying. Like, I had gone most of my college career at that point without praying. I prayed and I was telling God like, hey, this is not where I'm supposed to be. Can you like do what you have to do? And 3 days later, boy number 3 cheated on me. And that broke me, absolutely shattered me. I gave everything to this relationship. This time I finally stopped. I finally grieved. I finally let myself feel the emotions, and this time I felt like I was grieving every past relationship as well. It felt like I was grieving myself, like I had lost myself. And I remember through that grieving, I did everything in my power to convince this guy that I was like a trophy and he had made a mistake. I wanted him to want me back so bad. Eventually, I saw a TikTok video. This TikTok video changed the trajectory for everything. It was a woman who had highlighted the story of Lot and Lot's wife, and she said, I don't care how much you want love, you need to keep moving. Like, you can't keep looking back. God brought you out for a reason. And like something just clicked in my brain. I didn't want to get out of bed, you all know the breakup blues. But my dog, God used my dog to take me down long walks, and I would just talk to God. Again, this was very strange for me, but I was bored on these walks, and you know, I started just talking to God. It started with me telling God like, I'm so hurt, like I don't know how I'm supposed to continue on. And then eventually it turned into me just talking to God about things. And then God, I remember verbatim, I heard God telling me that he wanted to talk to me, but he needed me to read his word so he could talk back to me. And so the next day, I remember after that walk, I came back inside, I grabbed my Bible and I started reading it. And so that's my coming to God moment. I started reading my Bible. God basically used that breakup to show me that my value, that I was putting my value in, was in these relationships that were so temporary, and that as long as I continued to put my value in the idolized relationships and these men that I idolized, then my value was going to be variable. It was always going to waver. And he taught me that my value was in him. If I put my value in him, nothing can shake it. And so he did a lot of building me back up, because again, I told myself like this past relationship made me girly, and I told myself that nobody was gonna love me the way that boy number 2 did. Or y'all know like how like degrading, like I had all these self-degrading thoughts in my head, and he literally was like, we gotta break this. Now I know God loves me more than anything, than anyone could. God is God, and nobody needs to take his space. Now I know that relationship hole that I had was a God-shaped hole, and I was filling it with people in a relationship, and regardless of how the relationship looked and if it was toxic and if it was so bad for me, I let it be the God of my life, and God removed that and rescued me, because that was his spot. He demanded his spot, and he called me home. I'm so glad that like he let me break, because that breaking led me to pause. I took a break from boys. It was a short break, but I took a break from boys, which was strange for me. I always had a boy cookie, okay? Don't get it twisted. I had a boy cookie regardless. But God built me back up, and he healed me. And God, there was just so much healing from all this hurt. All the daddy issues that exhibited in these past relationships, what I put up with me giving everything and still getting verbally abused and being told that me myself was not enough. And God, he healed that. He removed that. He just transformed that. He told me, you have me, you are enough. In me, you are enough. You don't need them. You don't need a relationship to tell you that you were strong, courageous, beautiful, valued, loved. New boyfriend, who dis? And this by far has been like completely perpendicular to all my other relationships. It was strange, because having a healthy love with somebody who heard me and valued my opinion and loved me as who I am was very, very strange. He doesn't degrade me, he uplifts me. In being with him, I'm given a family. It's just so beautiful to see, and I'm so grateful for that. Y'all know my boyfriend got baptized this year, and God is just moving. Like, it's crazy to think that in this relationship, I don't have to give my body up. My boyfriend values me for me, not for like what I can physically, intimately give him, and he respects that. We are abstinent, and it's crazy to say. I thought I would never be able to have a relationship like this. God gave me friends. I have a whole Bible study group with my girls. Love them to death. I have a support system, and in that, God has kind of filled in that hole that I'd had since childhood, where nobody showed up for my dance concert. A church, y'all know I found a home church. I already talked about this. God really has moved in this department. It took 3-4 tries to find my home church, but now I can't imagine my life without that gathering, without that assembly. Church has really like revolutionized my faith. It has really upgraded it. Now I'm walking in my dominion. This is the big one. Transformation Church has a sermon for dominion. I feel like I have a tighter grasp in who I am, and that's because I got to know the Creator. I got to find out my dominion, and me pursuing God, me pursuing his purpose and his will and doing what he wants me to do. I am whole. God makes me whole. I am whole in him. So now I can't do anything but talk. I can't help but to talk about this. This is why this YouTube channel exists. God has really, really moved. I really thought these relationships that I was engaged in the past were it. Like, I thought that was it. And it's crazy because there's so much more. You don't have to sit through toxicity. You don't have to sit through getting degraded or being lowered. You don't have to put up with anything less than the love that God outlines in 1 Corinthians chapter 13. Because if God's already got that, why? You don't need to take anything less. And I had to learn that. Finding out who I am. I lost myself in all these relationships because I replaced God's throne and God's hole with men who also didn't know who they were. And you know, we were all so young trying to figure out who we were. And that was the problem. I was idolizing these things that also didn't know who they were. These temporary things that were unstable. I know who I am now. I know who I am. I watched my mom deal with all of this stuff and just kind of just take it. So I kind of just took it. I thought that was love. And in my lack of knowledge of the Father and the love that he provides continuously without fail, me not knowing that made me accept way less, not even half of that. So cool to look back at like how much God has moved and used these situations. I don't regret any of these relationships because each of them has revealed something within me that needed to be healed or needed to be highlighted so that I could fix it. And so I'm so grateful for each of these relationships, even no matter how toxic they were, because God used them anyways. God used what the enemy meant for evil and turned it to good. Today, loving relationship. Today, pursuing God. And today, walking in my dominion. This is my letter of recommendation for you. If you are called to share your testimony, share your testimony. God's not gonna let it rest until you release your testimony, okay? But also, if you were like me and your relationships were kind of like the God of your life, that's okay. God is gonna rescue you. Me telling God like I'm broken and I'm hurt and I'm so mad that he did what he took away that relationship led me to here today. It led me to the only permanent constant thing in the world, and that's God. Nobody can take that away from me. Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. And in that way, I found who I was. In that life, I am more fulfilled than ever before. And in that truth, I know who I am. Alright, you guys, that is the end of the video. Hopefully, it's uncomfortable. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you later. Bye.